it was kind of a no-brainer, right? It's like, okay, we have like all this inventory. It's stuck on a boat. We have no inventory left in our warehouse. We have to wait a month until this comes. Do we just turn everything off and run out of cash and not make payroll, or do we like what's the solution to this?
You're listening to the Deal Closers podcast, brought to you by websiteclosers.com, a show about how to build your e-commerce business to be profitable, scalable, and one day even sellable. I'm Isaac Porter, and on the show today, Website Closers Nate Lind and I talk to Scott Hutchison, founder of Strikeman, a laser training system that allows firearm owners to practice their shooting skills while safely at home. Scott founded the company in 2019, and it's been truly remarkable to see its growth. They made a cartridge that's about the same size as a bullet, and they put a laser on the back of it. When you shoot your gun with that cartridge, it shoots a laser for a split second, which will hit your target, and everything is tracked by the Strikeman app on your phone. You know, most entrepreneurs I talk to have ideas, sometimes crazy ideas and sometimes amazing ideas, pretty much every single day. While some of Scott's ideas have worked out, like Strikeman and other e-commerce company called paw.com, some of them haven't been so great.
To be honest, every idea that I've thought was going to work didn't. So I don't trust myself anymore. You know, if something hits me or I have an idea for it, I'll write it down and I'll do my market testing. But like 9 times out of 10, my ideas, they just don't seem to pass the test. We launched a company last year called No Soil, and it was an inside out planter. So it was made out of terracotta, and you put seeds on the outside and then fill it with water, and then the water goes through the terracotta, and then you have this plant that grows on the outside. It was basically like an adult chia pet. We sank about 100K into that and ordered a bunch of inventory and then launched marketing. And like our initial marketing tests, everything looked good, but I think it was a trendy idea that was trendy maybe a year or two ago. And then when we launched it, we were way past that, and it just flopped.
Even before that, Scott had a business that definitely wasn't a flop. It's a jewelry company called Ash Bridget, and it was doing over $13 million at the time he sold it.
I negotiated a deal with the NBA, NHL, NFL, NCAA to make jewelry for every single team. And then we were going to use Facebook ads to target every single team's female fan base. And like,
dude, so wait, hold on a second. So you negotiated one deal with all the professional sports leagues?
Yeah. So there was one guy who had the jewelry license for all of the big leagues. This guy who was out of Pittsburgh. So we got him to produce the jewelry for us at like a really good cost. And, you know, for this to work, we had to buy hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory up front. I did the market testing, but it wasn't rigorous enough. And we had all this inventory. We thought it was going to be a slam dunk and get us to that $20 million mark. And it flopped, and we had too much inventory and not enough cash. And we went belly up because of that. So that was about 8 years ago. Since then, I've been like a lot more careful with, I don't know, like running a small, like an e-commerce company. Like you have to be very careful with your spending and make sure that the cash flow is healthy. So any big decision you make when it comes to inventory or marketing, when it comes to bigger spends, you have to be rigorous with your testing, and you have to figure out a way to test. Otherwise, you'll go out of business quickly.
Gotcha. Getting back to Strikeman, in developing the app, you were able to get some intellectual property and file for some patents. So how did you kind of determine that what you had built was unique enough to go down that road?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not a patent expert, but like what originally with Strikeman, like there was a few other players in the space that they essentially had the target, the laser cartridge, the phone mount, and then their app. And like what would happen with their apps is you would shoot at the target, the lasers would hit the target, you'd have maybe 20 shots, your session would be done, and then you get a screenshot of where all your shots hit. So it was very bare bones and basic. So, you know, we talked to some firearm instructors, a couple SWAT guys out of Miami who gave us some ideas and said, listen, like you need a shot timer to get some graphs so you can, over time see how your average accuracy scores are improving. It would be fun to have a section that would allow you to compete with your friends or family. So it was things like that we just piled on top of what was already existing. And then once we did that, we filed patent pendings for that. And then with the Strikeman Pro system, the physical product for Strikeman Pro was unique enough to do a patent pending as well. So, the way I approached it was like, let's just make this thing better than everybody else and make it as addictive and fun as possible. And then just give all the information to a patent lawyer and just see what he can do with it. So that was kind of our process. And we were able to get patent pendings. They're still pending, so we'll see what happens with it. But yeah, like my approach is like, I'm not an inventor. I like to find something that's existing in the market that is, that has a proven customer base and proven model, and then just come in there and make it way better. But it's challenging, right? Because if there's already something that exists, you have to obviously be wary of existing patents. It's challenging for you to patent what you do as well, right? Like the holy grail is to invent something, patent it, have the IP, build out the marketing. But in my experience, it's like I was saying before, how like 9 out of 10 of my ideas don't work, or even my inventive ideas. Like it's a lot trickier to just come up with a great idea and for it to just like be a slam dunk, and for all your marketing to just work super easily. So
Scott, what was the development process like? How did you bid out the app and vet who you were going to use and manage them and communicate the requirements of it all? Like that sounds kind of daunting. Tell us about that.
yeah, well, so we ended up working with three different development teams. Development team one was very inexpensive. They were out of India, and like our budget was low. Like really, I would say like under 20,000 to build the entire app, which is like insane. Development team one, like the whole idea was okay. Like we shot recognition, we need that to be at least 80%, but our main focus was proving the model. So we didn't want to put too much money into it, but we needed it to work well enough. That was phase one. And then we in phase one, it was about 6 months after launching the product. Like we saw a lot of opportunity with marketing, and realized, okay, it's definitely worth it to put more money into development. So phase two was a development team out of Toronto, Canada, where I live. They got shot recognition from 80% to maybe 85%, and then improved the UI and UX. So it was a bit easier to use, less crashes, that kind of thing. But the app was still like not where we needed it to be. That was about a year after launch. But at the year point, we really saw a lot of growth, and we realized, okay, like let's do a deep dive into this. Let's talk to our customers. Let's talk to firearm instructors. Let's get as much information as we can. Figure out exactly what's missing in the app in terms of features. So we ended up adding 35 new features to the app. Completely redid the UI UX. Added a competition element. All this other stuff, and we did that with the third development team. That they were a company called DAS that was working out of California. These guys, unlike the first two, specialized in augmented reality, and so they had a lot of experience, and they were expensive. We spent a lot of money, but it got us to a really competitive level where we could finally say like our product is the best in the market. Up until this point, now we just continue to just record app issues and fix stuff, and things break and then we fix it again. But the crazy thing is that I have no experience in IT. So like it was just us just shooting ideas at these developers at different stages, and then them putting it together. This my experience of all this is that like it just works. We were just so focused on building this out that like when we needed enough cash, the cash came. The timing of it all just seemed to work out, and yeah.
How did your marketing change from the beginning when the app was like not even in existence to then at the end having a badass app? Like, did you change your marketing to consumers based on the evolution of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our marketing at the beginning was like we started growing during COVID, right? the majority of our firearm audience is right wing. So we cater to our audience and in our messaging and talking about the pandemic. And some of our stuff was a little controversial at the beginning, but the truth is it sold. And like, right wing people in America were just eating up our messaging and stuff like that. So at first we basically just said, well, the message in 2020 and 2021 was basically like, save money on ammo. Ammo is super expensive. Our system solves your problem and it lets you practice at home, and you get like 2,000 shots out of every laser. So that was a no brainer. But that was our main message. It was just essentially like, be an American, keep shooting, and save all your ammo so you can stockpile it for some, who knows why they do that. I'm Canadian. I'm still confused about it, but
this is no joke. When you and I first met, and you told me about the product, and I went on the website and checked it out, and Nate had introduced us, and I was like, this is so cool. I didn't know anything like that was on the market, and I bought a Strikeman immediately, and just started using it in my basement, and I was like, this product is just really cool. I like to target shoot, but I don't really ever go to a range, and it is really expensive to shoot live ammunition. So this is a way that, I could practice. I mean, you gamified target practice.
Yeah.
And you made it affordable, like as compared to a couple of bucks a bullet sometimes. They could shoot
two boxes. Yeah, less than 2 boxes of ammo. You can buy a Strikeman.
Yeah,
and shoot 4,000 times. You can shoot infinitely. You just have to replace the little batteries every once in a while. But I wanted to give some gross statistics about the business, and then just kind of ask you for your viewpoint on the business at these different points in time. So you started in 2019. That was a startup year. Between 2019 and 2020, the net income of your business grew 36,000%, right? That was your first year where it really hit. So like that year, 2020, when did you realize like, okay, we've got a winner here, and we're going to scale this up? Like, was there a day that you remember thinking like, this is going to work?
Yeah, it was actually in 2019 because we launched in September, but we had I think we only had like 80 grand worth of inventory, right? And we sold it out immediately. We sold it we just turned on some ads and did bare bones stuff, and the inventory was gone in a month. And the cost per acquisitions were really, really low and cheap. That was when I was like, okay, we're all in on this immediately. Because
So essentially, you knew as soon as you launched, you're like, this is fire. I'm doubling down.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and you're spending maybe 2,000, 3,000 a day on ads, on Facebook ads and some other stuff. And then your cost per acquisition, it was really low. And then you look at the market size of, okay, who's going to buy this company or this product? I think like 1/3 of the US owns a firearm. It's probably more than that. I think the numbers are like 100 million people in the US. So that's a pretty good chunk of people. And then you see, we've only sold to, 3,000 people, and we sold it of all of our products. So and it was so cheap. So you kind of get an idea like, okay, to me, that's just a huge sign that there's going to be a lot of potential and with growth and all that. So that was 2019. 2020 was like we were capped at marketing spend because our inventory levels were low, right? So every inventory cycle, we were trying to build out our inventory levels by, add another 20 or 30% of inventory every cycle. And we had about 6 cycles a year, right? So we're hopefully by the end of the year, we've doubled or tripled our inventory. So the first 2 years was essentially just us ramping up inventory levels and using our income from sales from the profit to build out inventory levels. And by the time we got to, I think, 2021, and we had a great year in 2021, really good growth compared to 2020 and the year before that. And then
you were up 159% in 2021 over 2020 in revenue, and similarly in net income. So how hard was it to keep up with that inventory burn?
I mean, it's pretty simple. It's just a matter of turning down ad budgets, right? Like if you're selling out, then you got to slow down ads. But the demand was so high in 2021 that we went on pre-order, and a lot of companies were doing it at the time. Just like there's all the crazy supply chain issues that were going on, so we ended up just going on pre-order, and we're really open about giving. We just let people know like this isn't going to ship for a month, but you can pre-order it, and that didn't slow down sales one bit, which was like so surprising to me. I think everything was so expensive, like with the inflation and the cost of ammo and the supply shortages, like people wanted so badly to be able to shoot without wasting ammo that they were willing to pre-order at the time. So that kept their growth strong, even though we were having all the supply chain craziness going on.
So I want to just dig into the pre-order thing because I think it's something that you did that was really smart for your business. Nate and I have seen all kinds of companies, in particular in 2021, that had major logistics issues. You had those issues, right? You were experiencing those issues. But when you look at the financial statements of the business, you guys crushed it in 21 because of this pre-order concept. And so pre-order meant that you didn't have inventory, but you were able to keep generating sales. Like how did you even think to do that?
Well, it was like it was kind of a no-brainer, right? It's like, okay, we have like all this inventory, it's stuck on a boat. We have no inventory left in our warehouse. We have to wait a month and a half, a month till this comes. Do we just turn everything off and run out of cash and not make payroll, or do we like what's the solution to this? Pre-order, right? And we have a Shopify store, so there's plenty of Shopify apps where you simply just download the app, put in like the delay, and like you're up and running, and you have a pre-order button instead of an add to cart button. So that's what we did. Usually this would not work, but I think everyone was very aware of all this. It was hard to get stuff at the time, so I think they're just willing to wait. We got lucky though; like it could have gone the other way really quick. Like if people weren't willing to wait and they just said no, like and then our marketing broke, we would have been in a really different situation for sure.
Yeah, people couldn't get toilet paper or bullets back then, but they could order their Strikeman.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Pre-ordering toilet paper isn't as effective.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing too was that we were, there's a lot of lockdowns right at the time. So some people couldn't go to the range, right? And like people were just spinning at home, having nothing. Like they just wanted something to do, or like they wanted something to be excited about. So buying $100 targeting Strikeman system was just like, I don't know, it was just a dopamine hit for people, I would say, when they needed it. Yeah.
It's a smart move because I could say there's a number of clients I had going through that same period of time that didn't do those pre-orders, and you exited. They did not. Another one I could think of in specific, they were doing pre-orders as well. Same thing, using Shopify. Had a pre-order setups. It's kind of like that Kickstarter mentality where people will buy stuff before it's ready, and then they'll just wait for it. So that one decision may have been the game changer between getting sold and limping around for a while.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to work. I was like, I knew, like, I was like, oh man, it's going to be at least a year of this, maybe longer, just not being able to get your product into the ports and on a truck, right? So but when we saw like, oh my God, like people are willing to buy it and wait, that was phenomenal. We had to like get more support staff because 80% of people, they would see the pre-order now button with like the estimated shipping date, and they would understand that, but some people would just think it was an add to cart button. I would say 20% of them. So a lot of emails and phone calls of just explaining to customers that we're on pre-order. But like, even during that whole pre-order days, like our refund rate was still really, really low.
Yeah, I pre-ordered actually a Strikeman for my dad and for my business partner for I guess it would have been Christmas of 21. And one of the things I thought that you did that was really good is the communication was good. Like I ordered it knowing they weren't going to get it for Christmas. Like it was clear, like this isn't going to come for Christmas. And then I got text messages periodically saying like, hey, this is your estimated delivery date. This is your estimated delivery. So I never was concerned that like I wasn't going to get it. And I always felt like I knew when I was going to get it, which I think that would be like a best practice for anybody who's in a inventory shortage situation, is thinking about this pre-order is like really that clear communication. Cause I never called. I was, maybe I put my phone number in. I'm sure some people didn't put their phone number in when they ordered or whatever. So you maybe didn't have them for SMS, but so like on Christmas morning, I was like, hey, I got you this. And I showed my dad the picture. And then, it was like, I don't know, a couple weeks later it came, but it was like no big deal because I knew what to expect. So at what point did you decide that you wanted to sell the business, and kind of what was involved in your thought process about getting to that decision?
My model is that I build companies out for 2 or 3 years, and then I sell it. I've been in companies in the past where we've gone past 10 million, and there's a lot of employees, and for me that's too much of a headache and it's too stressful. And I like being in a startup, like in the first couple of years when you're essentially just building the product out and making it better. That's what gets me excited. And yeah, so like from day one, obviously, like I sold a weighted blanket business before this, and before that, sold like a cap log, selling cap products. So like, my model is find something like Strikeman, and then build it out, build out the marketing, build it, like get that EBITDA as high as you can, and then sell it at 3 or 4 years. I don't have the stomach past 10 million in revenue. Like once we get past that, like I'm usually burnt out at that point. Like I basically have this cycle of like go hard for 3 years, sell it, burn out for about like, well, just recover, like just take it easy, go skiing and blah blah blah, and then after 2 or 3 months, I get recharged and do it again. But yeah, like it's interesting. But like as I'm getting older, like you learn so many new ways to do this, and like a lot of times the way you're doing things isn't actually, there's a better way to do it, right? So I've learned a lot with this exit, and this exit was particularly difficult because we had to hit numbers, and in 2022 our app broke, and we weren't hitting our those projections for a couple months, and that was like the stress levels were super high, and then we figured it out and got the app working again, and our app reviews got better again, and then we actually just crushed it at a level we hadn't done before. But my intent is always to sell. It's just I've also had companies that we've tried to sell, but it was like we hit a peak, and then things started going down, and marketing stopped working, and we stopped launching cool products, and we couldn't sell it, even though it was doing like, it was Ashley Bridget, we were doing about 11 million a year, but we couldn't sell it because we were on this downward trend, not on the upward trend. So timing is very important, and like my train of thought is when I don't want to sell it, that's definitely when I should be selling it. That's the time. Yeah.
That's super smart. Yeah. So like one of the things that Nate and I talk about a lot is that the highest valuation that the company will ever receive is before they hit their peak. Because you want that high growth rate with the projection for ongoing growth. Once you peak and then dip, you either have to kind of work through that, or your valuation can get hammered by the market. If the business is actually on a declining trend, I mean, there's any business is going to have peaks and dips along the way. But if the business actually starts to decline, then it's really hard to sell. And so, I've seen so many situations where somebody waited too long, and a $30 million business becomes a $5 million business, or a $5 million business becomes a $500,000 business. And it's amazing how quickly it can flip, especially in this space, because there's in the e-commerce space, there's so many challenges that can come up with, changes to the different platforms. If you're advertising on Facebook and they change the, iOS changes the privacy rules, and, all the advertising metrics change. And so, people, like, one of the things I think you did really well throughout this entire transaction is you just kept, anytime there's an obstacle, you're like, how do I fix it, overcome it? And you kept, kind of fighting and clawing your way through every problem that came up and getting to like a new higher level in the business. But those problems are always going to continue to come up. And so, I think your thought process of like, when things seem to be going the best, that's also when they're going to look the best to a buyer. But it's also a really hard decision to make for a seller, to be like, nobody wants to leave money on the table. Nobody wants to sell too low, but there's also a chance of waiting too long and leaving a lot of money on the table that way too. So there's dual directional risk.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was funny because I know like we were a Canadian company that was selling to an American, right? So that cross-border transaction added a lot of complexity with the deal. There was a lot of due diligence and accounting work. And you guys like, there was days where I was just flipping out. Like, it was just, and you were able to be that calm, collected presence through the whole. It was the most up and down thing I've ever gone through, because there was a lot of diligence, and them buying a Canadian company, they had to do a reorg and all this other stuff to get the company back to the U.S. And in that whole process of diligence, it was very volatile. We had good months, bad months, and there was definitely weeks where I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to sell this, but then we came out of it. And then the final 6 months until we finally closed, we had this enormous growth, and we were on a trajectory to really, like, there was many points in that last 6 months where I was like, I don't want to sell this, like, and like even all the employees here were like, you're crazy to sell this, but like, having gone through the pain of trying to sell a company when no one will buy it, that memory for me was just like, I think it served me. Even if we stuck around and grew it, I don't know, there could have been a million things that could have brought us down again, and we'd have to start from scratch and try to get back up. So for me, it was just the discipline of like, okay, you made the decision from day one when I reached out to Isaac and Nate, like when I reached out to you guys to sell this, like, I made the decision then, so we're sticking to it, and it was just being disciplined and not making like emotional decisions, right? And Isaac, you're the king at that. Like, so many phone calls where I was freaking out, and you're just like, no, everything's all good. Just, it's, like, you're more of like a therapist in some ways. Like, I don't know, like, I'd be freaking out about all this stuff, and you just like,
That's why I've got the couch in my office back here.
yeah, yeah. No, because it's stressful, and like, this was the biggest exit I've ever had, and it was a life-changing exit, and I haven't even kind of figured out what I want to do with all the capital yet. I've just been taking it easy and put it into like a high interest savings account and not making any moves just yet. But like, I know, like, for me, it was so important to get this done, and it happened, and like, any exit after that, like I don't have to worry as much because I know I'm okay financially. Like,
and you had like a bunch of life decisions that were converging all on like the week that we closed, right? You bought a house. I think you had just gotten engaged. You got my dream car, and you sold your business, right? Am I right? All within like a week or two.
Literally all within the same week. Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, it all just happened, and then it was Christmas, right? So yeah, it was wild. It like, when it rains, it pours, I guess. Like, everything was just happening at once, and it was absolute chaos. But wouldn't have it any other way. Like, it was just, yeah, like that, like 2022, like, going through that massive growth with the company, and like the ups and downs of all of it. It was such a wild ride, and it was really hard in a lot of ways. But like, it was a ton of fun. Like, it was just a lot of fun to do.
Did you have a sense of validation that someone paid you a whopper amount for something that you created? Like, what was the sense of like confidence that was instilled in you, or validation that you were able to exit at such an exponential number from what you put into this in the beginning?
As the years go by, you do build this kind of trust in yourself, right? To be able to get stuff done, no matter how hard the task is. For me, it wasn't so much as like someone giving me the cash. It was, like, what I find is certain levels of money that you're going after, like, the higher you go, the greater the challenge, right? There's just more challenge that comes with that greater amount of income or cash that you're trying to get. So the amount of trials we went through in that final year, where there was about 6 or 7 big points where it was like sink or swim, and we could have easily have sank, but we didn't, because we just grinded through it. And a lot of everyone at the company was exhausted, right? And it felt like a huge grind, but we just one day at a time, we just got through it. So more than anything, I would just say, like it's like a self-assurance. It's like, it's this deeper confidence to know that, like, no matter what the task is, no matter how crazy or challenging the task is, like, I can get it done.
Yeah, that's that self-reliance.
Mm-hmm.
There are some really interesting things about this transaction structurally. We touched on one of them. One was that this was a hybrid sale. So it was part asset purchase and part stock purchase. And we worked with a lot of professionals to help us figure out the way to do that correctly. And then the other thing I think was interesting is part of the structure that you took was, of course, your cash payment, but then there was this convertible note where you get a seller note, but then at any time during the next 3 years, you have the option to convert that to equity. Can you talk about that and kind of how that option came up or how it was presented to you?
Well, like first of all, like we wanted as much cash up front. That's kind of the goal with these deals. So we got to a number that we were happy with, and then the rest that was owing was as we were negotiating, we wanted at least half of the remaining amount guaranteed, and then we ended up getting to that point where it was a convertible note, and that's attractive because like I've sold companies in the past where the person who takes the operator who takes over has no experience, and that's not a good thing because they can tank it. And on most deals, like I don't know, I would say like the vast majority of deals, you're getting paid out on performance at some level, right? So like the buyer for Strikeman, he had a lot of success and knew what he was doing, and he had a really talented operator that was going to come in and replace me as CEO. So yeah, it was just like based on like the new operator's track record, I couldn't see how they would fail, and I could understand. It was funny, yeah. The buyer basically told us like generally what his plan was with the company. We got excited about it, so obviously we wanted to be able to convert that portion into equity if the growth continues, and I strongly believe it's going to continue. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fairly unique structure because it gives you have a guaranteed amount in the note, but then you can convert that note for a predetermined amount of equity in the new business.
mm-hmm.
I think that was a really great way to make sure you're going to get this base level payment, but then give you the potential for what could be quite a bit of upside, in the future if the buyer is as successful as we think and hope they will be.
For sure. And there's also like you get attached to your company, right? And like you put your heart and soul into the products. You just want to see it succeed. So like having that option to be able to go back into it and be a partner at some level is huge for me. Like yeah. So I don't know. We'll see how things go. Like I've been working with them now to continue the momentum of the company, and they have they've kind of revealed all of their ideas to me after closing, and I'm super excited for them. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's what ends up happening if I hold on to some ownership and just help them out, kind of thing.
What were your biggest surprises going through this process, Scott?
There was a lot of them. Like in terms of lessons, like the next company I start is going to be it's going to be a US corp, not a Canadian corp. What I've learned is that like obviously the pool of buyers is in the US. So as a Canadian, you don't want to have a Canadian corporation. It can limit your pool size, like the amount of buyers. And so for me, I didn't realize how complicated it would make things for a US owner to then buy a Canadian business. It was very complex, and I needed. That's why working with you, Isaac, like I needed someone with a financial background who just understood how to get these deals done to like navigate through all of that. So that was a big surprise.
How about we went through a quality of earnings process that was pretty rigorous, and have you ever been through a Q of E before? What were your general thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was also surprising. Like the last company I sold, it was a Canadian e-commerce company that we sold to another Canadian. So the QV process with that only took 2 weeks, and our accountants basically set them everything. They vetted it, and it was done. So that's what I was expecting with this deal, but because this deal was a lot bigger and it was cross border, and our accountants weren't they weren't the best. Like we could have had better accounts. So there was some issues with the numbers, and I'm not a numbers guy. I don't deal with the accounting. I just let the accountants deal with it. So that was a big surprise because we had to go through a few rounds of diligence, and each round took about a month. And the buyer had a really sophisticated team behind him who really knew what they were doing. So that was intimidating on my end because there'd be things that like would arise from our accounting that I didn't know how to remedy the situation because I don't have a financial background. I'm a marketing guy. So the level of complexity that went into this deal, I wasn't ready for. But like, again, Isaac, you were like, and the other thing too is that my accountant, like he wasn't the best at explaining like accounting issues and financial issues in layman terms. So I was even more confused. And then Isaac, you'd be able to come in and just like in plain English, just explain exactly what was going on. And like, yeah. So that was enormously helpful because a lot of times I just feel like I'm dead in the water. I don't know how to solve this problem. I feel powerless. I don't know what to do. And then Isaac, you'd always have this very clear solution where you'd say, oh, we just have to do X, Y, Z. That's all that's needed here. And then it was just understanding what the solution was. It was really easy to just be like, okay, we'll just action that. And that happens so many times. So yeah.
So having a US based entity and then having a proficient accounting firm would be two things that you would do a little differently this next time.
And just being on top of the bookkeeping and having your books in order and having really competent accountants that are in the US. So when you go sell the company, everything's American. And and the other thing too is all of our numbers that we were projecting were in Canadian dollars, right? And all of our accounting was in Canadian. So there was plenty of times where they were working in USD, and then there'd just be confusion where sometimes things would look better than it actually was, and then later they'd be like, oh, it's Canadian, it's not US, So.
Well, we definitely enjoyed working with you, Scott, and I'm excited to see what you do next. I know you got some ski trips here that you're coming off of, and hopefully a few more planned before the snow melts. But we'll be here and ready to go when you build the next great company.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, guys.
All right, that was Scott Hutchison and Strikeman. You can find them at strikeman.io. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Deal Closers podcast, brought to you by websiteclosers.com. If you like this show, be sure to rate us, write a review, press the follow button, and share it with your network. And of course, if you're looking for help selling your e-commerce business, be sure to visit websiteclosers.com. This episode was edited and produced by Earfluence. I'm Isaac Porter. Follow me on LinkedIn, and we'll see you again soon on the Deal Closers podcast.